Might possibly look into getting a new one. That one has seen a good share of years.
Yes, it does. It's good stuff.
Yes, it does have to actually initialize and all that wonderful stuff. So, a needle pulling thread. We're going to pick up on page 16 of the workbook. We're under 4, the vanity of the flesh, verses 25. I believe that is chapter 2, or is it chapter 3? Chapter 3, verse 25 through chapter 4, verse 1. And Shea, I believe it is your turn to read.
Yep.
Kick us off with a bang.
Come on!
Sounds good.
Marriage will be rare because the male population will be cut off. The desperation of women is magnified when as many as 7 women will take hold of one man and request him to allow them to all be regarded as his wives.
Sounds like they have a problem.
I would say so.
Yes. What is it that caused the issue? As we kind of recap.
Oh, there was a lot. Most of 2 through 3 is that's what it's all about. Their love for money, their idols. They, as he says, they turn to materialism, worship the work of their own hands. They were proud and haughty, which we all know the good Lord does not like people who match that description. Yeah. They committed fornication, sinful. Yeah, and then that was kind of as a whole. Then they turned to selfish interests. And then society went down the drain far after all that. The Lord removed his provisions.
Okay.
Yeah, the list goes on. But inexperienced people in position and rule.
Inexperienced people in rule.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at verse 14 and 15 of chapter 3, because we are dealing with chapter 3, that section ends with the oppression of the people, the oppression of the poor, and they're grinding the people to pieces. So then we pick up in verse 16 through the end of the chapter, through 4 verse 1, really. And what you see is the arrogancy and the vanity of the daughters of Zion, and and what is happening that allows that. I mean, you have the daughters of Zion are puffed up. They're walking with stretched necks. What does that indicate to you?
They got the nose in the air, right? So.
Got their nose in there. We don't know anybody like that, do we?
Yeah.
Ella, you haven't experienced that at school yet, have you? Girls and guys were walking around with their nose in the air, thinking they're better than other people. But I mean, you've seen the cliques that go on in school, right? You've seen it. I drive a school bus. I can see it on my bus. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. People who think they're better than others. They walk around with airs, you know. They all. So.
This isn't getting any better.
So this is the type of people that Isaiah is prophesying against. These people are walking with their necks stretched forth, their noses in the air, their eyes looking down their noses, you know, and taking whatever they desire, and they're walking with mincing steps, like, ooh, this ground is just so dirty. I don't want to get my feet dirty.
That was kind of uncertain, but what he meant exactly by mincing steps.
They take small,
That's correct.
almost like they're on their tippy toes.
That's correct. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Little anklets that make noise, you know, rings on their fingers and bells on their toes. Yes. And they are so wrapped up in their image that they can't see anything else.
And Scottish would call Bango.
Hi, Scatter. So the Lord's, so Isaiah says this is the style, this is what is society. They changed?
Not much.
Not much, huh?
We covered that last time.
And so the Lord pronounces a judgment against these people. The Lord's going to take away all of this finery. He's going to take away their beauty. He's going to take away their ornaments, their headgear, all their bonnets and their finery, their earrings, their necklaces, their nose rings. And he's going to take away all the fine linens and the hoods and the veils, verse 23. And instead of all this wonderful perfume, which to me already smells like stink anyway, but then again, I'm allergic to all that.
A little bit more natural.
Well, instead of that sweet smell, there's going to be stink. And instead of a fine girdle, it's going to be torn. Mm-hmm. Instead of a well-set hair, instead of using hairspray, well, it's going to be baldness. And instead of a stomacher or a rope, it's going to be a girdle of sackcloth. Yeah. So instead of a nice fine linen belt, with all the wonderful fixings, it's just going to be a belt, a sackcloth, something rough and something rough and
modern to burlap.
And burning instead of beauty, branding. And he comes down to verse 25 and 26. The men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war. Her gates shall lament and mourn, and she shall be being desolate, shall sit upon the ground. So we're seeing that the reason these 7 women are going to be approaching one man is because of the judgment of the Lord against such a fallen society.
Right.
So,
because a lot of people will get wiped out.
Yeah. It's not a pretty sight.
No.
Jerusalem as a whole, when Isaiah pictures Jerusalem, a lot of times he pictures her as a person. And he's picturing her in this case as a person sitting just desolate, barren, ruined, in torn clothing with no hair, no makeup.
Not pretty.
no finery, just absolutely deserted. Questions or comments? Okay, C, top of 17, the future of Zion. Amos, first paragraph.
Verse 2. In that day refers to the same point in time as Isaiah 2:2-4, the Messianic age. In contrast to the present evil condition, the prophet again looks to the glory of the coming age, which is to be brought about by the branch of the Lord. Cross-reference Isaiah 11:1-5, Jerusalem.
No, Jeremiah.
23:5, 33, 15-16, Zechariah 3:8, and 6:12.
Okay, so in that day refers to the same point of time as what was said before. What day? What day are we referring to?
Last age, sort of idea, or perhaps get unknown.
Our author says it refers to the same point in time as Isaiah 2:2-4. So,
Isaiah 2:4. Last days, comment to the prophets, and always refer to the Messianic era, the final age of history on this president.
so we're looking at the day of the establishment, according to Isaiah 2:2-4, the establishment of the house of the Lord. And so this is the Messianic age, the coming of the Messianic age. What age is Isaiah in right now?
There's a name for it.
Okay. What are the three ages?
I'm trying to remember.
What's the first age?
Give us the key.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Amos, Ezra, Alicia? Anybody know? First age.
It's right there, cloaks and shadow. See it.
Starts with a P. As Shay has already given you that.
The only thing that's coming to my brain is pilgrims right now. Wrong one. Whoa.
Who ruled? Who did God speak to? And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were known as the...
That's what I'm trying to remember. The head of the house, one of the houses.
Okay, and since they're men, they were known as the...
Patriarchs.
There we go. Patriarch. So the first age is the patriarchal age. Second age. Who did God speak to?
Moses.
Moses. So who ruled? What rule?
Moses, the law.
The law. So that's known as the Mosaical law. Thank you, Ezra. And so then, so what age, then what's the third one is?
Messianic.
Messianic.
Isaiah was under the law.
So Isaiah was under the Mosaical age. So this in that day refers to the coming of the Messianic age. And in contrast to the Mosaical age, the evil condition that the prophet was looking at, he's looking now toward the glory of what was to come. And that is to be brought about by what? The glory of the coming age was to be brought about by the branch. Who or what is the branch? Don't let O'Shea do all the answering. Come on, you guys got mouths.
I got this one. I already know.
I haven't been teaching you for the last how many years of your life for you not to know these.
Wow. You know, pay a mark.
What'd you do, Amos?
Might put me on a flat run.
What'd you flat run for? So who or what is the branch? This one should be easy for you. Jesus. Who is it that established the Messianic age? But the Messiah. Who was the Messiah? Jesus. All right. Verses 3 through 4, paragraph Ezra.
Verses 3 through 4. The judgment of God promised in Isaiah 2, 6 through 4, through chapter 4, will destroy the wicked and at the same time cleanse the survivors. Out of the purified remnant left in Jerusalem will come a branch, the Messiah, who will bring true beauty and glory to God's people. Reference Isaiah 28, 5, and 60.
Okay. Now remember, guys, because of the confusion that can happen, you need to use the word verse before the verses. Because if you say 28 and 28:5, we could also be talking about chapter 28, or we can end chapter 5. So make sure you use the word verse when you say 28 verse 5, okay, to avoid that confusion.
There are certain scenarios in the word that must be answered.
And that's one that Grandpa really prefers. He's been letting it slide, but you know. All right, so the judgment of God promised in Isaiah is going to destroy the wicked and yet cleanse the survivors. It's going to kind of weed out his field, isn't it? We see a kind of a similar picture in the parable of the tares, where, you know, Jesus gives the parable. The farmer goes out, he sows his seed, and his enemy comes in and sows the tares, which initially, when they grow up, you can't tell the tares from the wheat. But as time progresses, you realize that, hey, this is weeds and this is wheat. What are we going to do? Says his servants. And, well, if you try to pull the weeds, you're going to destroy the wheat. So the farmer says, leave the weeds until the harvest, and then we'll separate them out. Well, in that day of judgment, God here promises Isaiah that his day of judgment in this case is going to destroy the weeds, the wicked, and yet cleanse, remove the chaff, if you will, from the wheat, the survivors. And it is at this time that branch will bring true beauty and glory to God's people. Questions or comments?
This person who spent much time in my garden, I know exactly what he was talking about.
You really don't like letting weeds remain, but there are times and scenarios when you just have to, or you risk damaging the crop, the good plants, more and more. All right. Anything else? Verses 5 and 6 then. I guess we're back to you, O'Shea.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Of course, I could have offered Ella, but I just think I get the idea she doesn't want to read.
You got that.
She's shaking her head no at me.
It's all right. Can I?
Rejected. Yes.
Covering verses 5 and 6, the Lord will provide his people with divine guidance and protection. The cloud and the flaming fire reminds us of God's guidance when he led the Israelites from Egyptian bondage. Cross-reference Exodus 13:21 through 22. The tabernacle will be a shelter from the sun's heat and from the storm and rain. Therefore, this symbolizes how that the Lord will provide a refuge sufficient to meet every danger and every need.
Okay. Questions or comments on this one?
I did find it rather interesting how they linked it to pillar, cloud, and fire.
Okay.
That's the fire. I just kind of mildly interested. Like this kind of interesting. I don't think I would have thought of that.
Well, in verse 5, and the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night, for upon all the glory shall be a defense. And there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime from the heat, and for a place of refuge, and for a covert or cover protection from storm and from rain.
The first part of that is very similar to how it reads in Exodus. You know, the fire shall be there by the cloud shall be there by day.
What was the purpose of the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud in Exodus?
It protected them or separated them from the enemy.
Initially, what did it do?
Also told them when to start and stop.
So it led them. It guided them.
Yeah.
And then when Israel was caught between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army, God moved from in front of them to behind them, between them and the army. And that provided that defense that you're talking about. So,
Of course, the fire was light while they were moving at night. It probably told a lot of people to stay away. That's fire, and it's a tower fire. I'm not going anywhere near that.
you see that bright light over there? That's the children of Israel, and they're moving by night. You better stay away. What was the purpose of the tabernacle under the law of Moses?
The tabernacle, basically, a tent that separated Israel from the ark. It protected the ark.
Well, okay, as we look at what was in the tabernacle, we have the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat. We have the altar of incense. We have the table of showbread. We have the candlestick.
There was a lot of things that went into that tabernacle.
And so, what was the tabernacle for? What did people go to the tabernacle for under the Mosaical law? Because we know that in the courtyard was where the altar of sacrifices were, the altar of burnt offering.
That's what
And
brought the sacrifices.
so there again, I ask, what was it that people went to the tabernacle for?
Really bring sacrifice, worship God.
There we go. They went to offer sacrifices, to offer worship unto God. What is changed under the Messianic service, according to Isaiah's prophecy? Any idea, Ezra? Amos? Licia?
Isaiah says, "Hey, tabernacle." And then she used to go and look at different translations, pavilion, etc. But he says the tabernacle.
Yes.
I mean, the author of the citadel says the tabernacle. Now, there's a difference between the tabernacle and a tabernacle.
Well, the author can be simply mentioning, saying the tabernacle mentioned here in Isaiah 4, verse 6.
Right.
Whereas Isaiah is saying simply a tabernacle.
And that one is going to be a shelter, basically. For the sons who provide protection, place of refuge.
Okay. Backing up briefly to Isaiah chapter 2. The prophecy in 2 verses 2 through 3 technically 2 through 4, but let's go ahead and read that, Amos. Isaiah 2, 2 through 4. Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 through 4.
And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow into it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of the ways, and he will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and the spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.
What is the house of the Lord, according to this prophecy? Okay. Place where you go to learn his ways.
Above the hills.
It's above the hills. It's located in or on.
Jerusalem.
Remember what it says here in the passage. Let's stick with what it says.
Top of the mountain.
It's on the top of the mountains. The mountain of the Lord's house. Remember, mountain refers to
The other
government. So the government of the Lord's house, the kingdom of the kingship, the throne of the Lord's house, the seat of power of the Lord's house shall be established on the top of the mountains, and it's going to be exalted above the hills, above all nations, and all nations shall flow unto it. So the people say, let's go up to that throne, up to that kingdom, that palace, if you will, to the house of the God of Jacob. And then he identifies what is the house of the Lord at the end of verse 3, which is, out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from. So if the law and the word of the Lord is the same thing, then what's the house of the Lord? Zion's another name for Zion, city of our God. Spiritually, yes. But it's right there in the last part of the verse. Zion's another name for Jerusalem. So the Jerusalem's the house of the Lord. If Jerusalem's the house of the Lord, is there a need for the tabernacle?
No.
So a tabernacle is for a shadow, for a place of shade, for a cover, for a place of refuge. Its purpose, we go to Jerusalem, to the spiritual Jerusalem, to do what? To worship God. And so the tabernacle then, and this can be a kind of a stretch, but a tabernacle then is just simply for a place of refuge.
Yeah.
God's going to create a place of refuge, a place of shade from the heat, a place of cover from storm and rain. It's not the purpose of the tabernacle has changed.
Yes.
So, this symbolizes how the Lord will provide a refuge sufficient to meet every danger and every need. What is that tabernacle? What is that place of refuge for us today?
And I could be a lot of that. Find the refuge, word, and prayer. And worship.
Think of spiritual. Church. The church is our refuge.
All
right, any other questions or comments?
I don't know, it kind of just grew up on me. The tabernacle itself wasn't exactly very inviting to the Israelites.
No, they were actually, everyone was forbidden. The only people allowed in the tabernacle was
The Levites.
specifically
Specifically.
the house of Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you weren't of the house of Aaron, if you weren't the high priest going in to minister at the altar of incense and and before the mercy seat, or to change the showbread and the candles, you weren't allowed in that tabernacle.
Candles need me.
That's right.
I'm going to say the outlook of the children of Israel in general, most of them, it wasn't a place where you could go and have shelter or refuge.
Yep.
It wasn't the safe spot.
And also remember, by the time of Isaiah, the tabernacle had completely vanished.
Right. The tabernacle moved to the temple.
Mm-hmm.
Became the temple, and then the temple was food. So,
All right. So now we move on to Amos with Isaiah chapter. Actually, I guess we can do Amos there. Isaiah 2, verse 12. An application for today, please.
Excuse me, Paul.
2:12.
When man becomes successful with either worldly wisdom or wealth, they usually become lifted up in vain pride. This attitude leads them to feel
Sufficient.
self-sufficient without God. Therein lies the basis of their downfall. The attitudes described by Isaiah in this section could well be said of our own nation today, and the result will likewise be the same unless we can call men to turn sincerely to the Lord, from whom all blessings flow. Cross-reference Proverbs 14:34, 16:18, 3:7, and 1 Timothy 6:17.
As well under a lot of places.
All right. That's a lot of chapters. Questions or comments? O'Shea's already offered one.
There's no more. Looking at it, both from their time period and through history and then into our modern society, this holds true.
It does.
It holds very true that when men gain wisdom and wealth, now, it's normally it's one or the other, but we see the same cycle happen over and over and over again.
Notice it said worldly wisdom
Right.
or wealth. Worldly wisdom or worldly wealth.
Right.
All right. Anything else? Ezra, Isaiah 3:16.
What is regarded as immodest in one place and time may not be so regarded elsewhere, because customs and styles overdressing is immodest in some cultures, whereas underdressing is a problem in our society. Whatever calls unusual attention to one's body, thereby increasing unlawful or
Licentious.
licentious desires as immodest is immodest. The problem is not basically one of the dresses, it is one of the heart. 1 Peter 3, verse 3 to 4, 1 Timothy 2, verses 9 and 10.
Okay. Thoughts or comments? Both Peter and Timothy, or Paul, in these two passages reference the fact that we should not be so concerned with our outward appearance. Not that we shouldn't be clothed, but that we shouldn't be drawing attention to our looks. But rather we should be looking at our inward man, making sure that it is a person of character, full of good works, full of righteous living, being kind, considerate of others, and not running after the world's trends of fashion and, Greed.
It's where do you put your focus?
Where is your treasure? If I am wearing a lot of jewelry, and this goes for men or women, it doesn't matter. I've seen guys out there with 15 different necklaces and rings on every finger, sometimes 5 or 10 rings on every finger, flashing wads of cash and the latest new phone, sporting, tattoos, nose rings, earrings, and you name it.
I've seen a couple people wearing 2 or 3 watches.
What am I doing? What's my focus?
Draw attention to self.
Look at me. Look how great I am. Look how much money I have. So they set their status by what they wear. Yet God looks at what you do. Because as we get older, are our looks going to remain?
Yeah.
Guess what? This face is going to get wrinkly. I'm going to lose all this hair, or a good portion of it. And I don't care. I've earned every single one of these white hairs in my beard, and I'm proud of it. That could be true, Amos.
I don't remember so many when I was little.
Ella, you're not laughing. You probably have put a few in her mom's hair too. Anyhow, our looks are going to fade.
Our physical.
The jewelry tarnishes.
Very easy.
The fashions of this world decay. And so what doesn't decay? Our good works, our good character, our good name. If we maintain it, if we work at it, it doesn't decay. And we don't have to be flashy about it, going around saying, hey, look at what I do, look at what I do. Instead, we go about doing what needs to be done and letting what we do speak for itself. We don't need to blow our own trumpet. And so in Isaiah 3, verse 16, when we talk about the daughters of Zion being haughty, walking with their necks outstretched and wanton eyes, that's seductive eyes, you kind of think of people with heavy makeup, looking like doing what they can to draw attention to themselves, mincing steps and making tinkling with their feet. They're drawing attention to themselves, and that is what still is going on today. Hey, look at me. Look at the way I'm dressed.
That was their sole purpose for going out and walking.
Yes. So whatever calls unusual attention, whether it's overdressing or underdressing, if it calls attention to one's body, it increases unlawful or licentious, lustful desires. It is immodest. Man or woman, it doesn't matter. Because, hey, we've all seen the guys out there doing the same thing. Overdressing, dressed to the nines, dressed to kill, or underdressing. Their shirt off so they can show their six-pack abs and all that muscle, All right. So it is not a question of dress per se. It is a reflection of one's heart, because how we dress, how we act, is a reflection of what we think inside.
What do we see?
What do we seek?
Where is our focus? It goes right back to that.
All right, we got a little bit of time left to answer the questions giving scripture references. Concerning the mountain of the Lord's house, number 1, A. What?
Totally missed it.
When did Isaiah say it would be established? Let's go ahead and, hey, guess what, O'Shea?
I'm great. I'm first.
Because I think Ezra just read the 3:16.
Yeah, you did.
So,
When it would be established the last days, we would go into it, all nations, and see where would the word of the Lord come forth, Jerusalem. And that's all found in chapter 2, basically verses 1 through 5.
okay. 1 through 5. Technically 2 and 3.
But when you think about that, the last days. Was that what
Question number 2, Amos.
God had forsaken Judah because they pleased themselves in what? And in the children of strangers. 2 verse 6.
Okay. Anybody else have anything different? Better not. Question number 3.
Verse 6 kind of flat out spells out.
Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they are replenished from the east, and are soothsayers like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. Number 3.
Upon whom will the day of the Lord come? Everyone that is proud of mine.
Don't forget verse number 2.
Yep. Forgot one. Okay, we should actually have you read these verses. Anyway. So, number 4.
Short circuit, I tell you.
It is.
Where would they cast their idols of silver and gold? To the moles and bats.
Were they going to need it?
No.
What does verse 20 say?
It says, in that day a man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made each one for himself to worship, to the moles and to the bats. They aren't going to need these anymore.
Number 5.
Why was Jerusalem ruined and Judah fallen? The tongue and doings against the Lord.
Okay. Go ahead and read that one. Mm-hmm. This is thirsty work, you know.
Extremely exhausting.
For Jerusalem is ruined and Judah is fallen because the tongue and the doings are against the Lord. Provoke the eyes of the Lord.
What is their tongue symbolizing?
Their speech.
Speech.
That. You think of their lips. They're close. They're far from me.
With their lips they do honor me, but with their hearts they are far from me. Jesus also said that it's not what comes out of a man, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but what comes out. For with the thoughts,
Can't mention talking about the tongue and what it does without going to James.
James chapter 3. as your grandpa likes to say, there should be a sign hung on your tongue that says slippery when wet.
Seems that's pretty much always Go
Precisely. Don't smile, Amos. Question number 6. He's got to stay awake.
What is the reward of the righteous and of the wicked determined? It shall be well with the righteous, and it shall be ill with the wicked.
Okay, so that's the reward. But what determines that reward?
The doings of the righteous and 3 verse 10. Say ye to the righteous that it shall be well with him, for they shall eat the fruits of their doings. Woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him.
So we have the fruit of their doings and the reward of their hands. What is a good word to sum that up?
Their actions.
Thank you. Their actions determine their reward. So by their actions, then, they will get a reward, whether it be good, eating the fruit of their reward, the fruit of their doings, or it will be evil. We're going to pick up at number 7 next week. All righty.